Welcome to Permission to Thrive. I'm your host, Suzi Lula. As a spiritual therapist for over 20 years, I have the honor and privilege of ushering women and mothers just like you on a journey from simply surviving to powerfully thriving. I also have the honor of raising our son, Will, who is now a young adult, with my longtime partner, Jamie, so I'm right there on the journey with you. Consider this your personal sanctuary, your space to meet your heart, embrace your messy, and come home to your most authentic, extraordinary self. My hope is that you leave resourced and inspired because you are here to shine. Welcome to Permission to Thrive. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Permission to Thrive. So we're into the month of February. Most of us equate the month of February with love. So I'm going to do a few episodes on love, on creating more intimate and connected, loving relationships with those we are close to. And today I wanted to start with the heart of all love, which is self-love. Self-love is the heart of all love. We can truly love another only to the degree that we are able to effectively love ourselves, and to the degree that we can effectively, deeply love ourselves is to the degree then that we can cultivate and experience true intimacy and real authentic connection with those around us, which is what all of us truly long for. It's what all of us truly want in our lives. When you get to the end of your life, it is documented, it has been researched that those dying, those passing on, one of the biggest regrets, one of the biggest things that individuals say as they're moving on, passing on, dying, is that they wished they had let down their guard. They wished they had been able to love more deeply, open their hearts more fully, allow other people in, allow themselves to give love, and allow themselves to receive love more fully and more freely. So this is what we're going to be diving into today and throughout these next few episodes. If you are longing for, if cultivating and experiencing deep, close, real, authentic, connected, loving, kind relationships with those whom you love in your life, this is the month for you. So as I said, the heart of all love is self-love. We all hear often that self-love is so important. But what I have found working with thousands of clients, couples, students, individuals, families, is that we understand the concept of self-love, but very few of us have actually had the experience of self-love. And even less of us have had the experience of consistent self-love as a way of life. I was certainly one of these individuals. The idea of self-love was so elusive to me. I was starving for it, and yet it seemed so unattainable for me because it seemed like an abstract concept. And so today we're going to dive into how to truly experience self-love, and then how to truly take the experience of self-love consistently enough to create it as a way of life for you, so that you literally and dramatically transform your inner consciousness from one of perhaps self-criticism, self-shame, self-sabotage, to an inner consciousness where you truly are experiencing a rich and healthy and compassionate, kind, connected relationship with yourself, a relationship full of self-love and self-acceptance and self-support. What would that feel like to live in your own consciousness, in the energy and the environment and the atmosphere of real self-compassion, true self-support, that inner connection and that inner intimacy that we typically look for and long for in our outer relationships, What would it be like if you truly and consistently created your own inner environment that it was so kind and so loving that it was literally your own refuge? We want to be a refuge for others, and we want others to be a refuge for ourselves. But few of us truly experience, are you a refuge for your own self, for your own challenges, for your own stumbles and fumbles and mistakes, for your greatest aspirations and dreams and greatest heart's desires? Are you your own refuge? What is your own home? What is your relationship with your heart, with your love, with yourself? And if you aren't, why is this? And why is self-love so elusive? And how can we truly create a beautiful inner experience before we leave this episode today? So sit back and relax. Maybe you have a cup of tea. Maybe you have a journal. So why is this topic and inner experience of self-love so elusive to us? Well, when you think of any child under the age of 2, under the age of 4, most of us actually come onto earth feeling very in love with ourselves. If you think of a 2-year-old, if you think of a 4-year-old, they're very good with themselves. They love themselves. If you ask a 4-year-old, they don't really understand the concept of love, but a 4-year-old is very accepting of themselves. A 3-year-old, very accepting of themselves. They're very inwardly connected. And you too were at one point very inwardly connected with yourself. You liked yourself, which is probably a better phrase than self-love. If we used the phrase self-like, it would be less elusive to us. It would be more overt, more obvious. When you think of very young children, they like who they are. You're 2, you're 3, you're 4, you really like who you are. A child is very comfortable in their own skin, and that is something that is so attractive and so delightful about children. They're so unself-conscious. They're so unaware of the outside looking in. They are in their bodies, and you once were in your body. And you were so at one, so unified, so inwardly connected. There wasn't a split yet. You were your most authentic self, and you brought your most authentic self everywhere you went, and you were pretty cool with it until those around you, adults, perhaps your own parents, outer experiences, began to send you the message that who you are as you are is not okay. So begin to think of yourself when you were a child, perhaps young, middle school, teenager, young adult, and begin to just become aware that there was a time that you were so comfortable being authentically you. Little by little, this sense of inner connection was eroded because of the different outer experiences that you went through and the different outer messages that you ingested. And it might have happened little by little. Most often it does. And it also might have happened through larger incidences like trauma or neglect, or you had your boundaries very disrespected. Maybe you were sexually molested. Maybe you were disrespected, both in very dramatic ways and consistently in smaller ways over time. But either way and both ways, little by little, your sense of your comfort in your own skin diminished. Your sense of comfort in your own skin, accepting yourself as you are, exactly as you are in the moment, eroded, and you began to feel separate and apart from your truest self based on these external messages and these external situations and traumas and woundings and not having our needs met. And in addition, we may have experienced criticism. We may have experienced judgment. We may have experienced neglect, abandonment. We may have experience shaming. If you experienced any of these things, what happens then? What you experienced from the outside in then becomes your own internalized voice. So as you're hearing me, I want you to begin to call into your heart some of the ways that you were criticized, some of the ways that people around you or experiences and situations around you told you who you are as you are is not good enough. Hide your light, dim your light, constrict yourself, make yourself smaller. How you are as you are is not enough. Perhaps you learn to overcompensate, take over responsibility. You're imagining and envisioning that who you are is not enough, so I need to overcompensate. Who I am is not enough, so I need this from the outside. So you are beginning to look back upon some of the messages and some of the experiences that you received that began to separate you from your most authentic, joyful, comfortable, accepted self. So you're aware of two things right now. You're aware that at one time in your life, you were this little guy or little girl, and you loved shining your light and you felt very comfortable in your own skin. I want you to take a moment and really connect with that, because if you truly take a moment to connect with that, you will find a thread that takes you back, and you know who you really are. You know who you truly are. There is an essence, there is an authentic part of you that's still there. It's just waiting to come out again. And you simultaneously are aware of the different messages you got, whether you were criticized, whether you were judged, whether you were told to put yourself in a box. Who do you think you are? You're too much. Make yourself smaller, dim your light, overcompensate, take over responsibility. And as you become aware that you were not modeled true, real, unconditional love, you were probably not modeled, perhaps not in your family, but certainly not in this world. This world will not model to you that who you are exactly as you are is not only okay, but please, it's imperative that you shine that light of who you are. The world tells you, you need this to be okay. You need this many followers. You need to behave this way. You need to go to this school. You need to graduate like this. You need to make this amount of money, drive this car, have this many children, live in this neighborhood, have this bank account. The world is continually telling you that who you are and what you are is not okay as you are. So we are not modeled both by our family of origin and by this world to have the inner experience. Oh my gosh, who I am is great. Who I am is enough. Who I am delights the people around me. Who I am is enough. So because we were not modeled this, and because we were modeled often exactly the opposite of this, what happens? The voices and the messages from outside of ourselves, our external messaging and situations and experiences, now becomes internalized. And so rather than staying connected to that love and that love of self and the liking of ourselves from when we were really little, we internalize the critical voice, the self-sabotaging voice, the voice that says you are not okay, you need to be fixed, there is something desperately, dramatically wrong with you. You're wrong, you're broken, you need to be fixed, you need to overcompensate. You need to put on this presentation for everyone. You need to please others rather than be your authentic self. So many ways that this criticism and judging, and I call it the survival self, we learned to survive. We learned to survive within the criticism and judgment and shaming that we were receiving. And now that criticism and that judgment and that shaming that used to live externally now inhabits space within your own heart. I remember when my son Will was probably 4, 5, maybe not even that old, maybe 3 or 4. And I was so impatient with him and I was so frustrated. I have no idea about what, but I remember looking at him and in my impatient voice and energy, saying whatever I was saying to him. And he looked up at me with these big, giant, innocent 3-year-old eyes. And he said, "Mommy, your face looks so funny when it's all scrunched up like that. I don't like it at all. Your face doesn't look good when it's all scrunched up like that. I don't like it." And because it was an external voice coming back at me, it just snapped me out of that hypnotic, impatient, frustrated energy. He was 3 and he was still living in his innocence and his purity. And from the outside in, his own mother was externally putting something on him. Now, if this happens once in a while, if this happens every so often, that's life. And we are resilient. So this is not about being perfect because we are resilient beings. But if that way of being hadn't awakened me and I had continued over and over to have consistent criticism, judgment, shaming over and over consistently over the years, then the other individual, what I am presenting from the outside in, becomes their internal experience. And this is what happened with most of us. And so that experience where we come in and we think we're pretty cool, it evaporates. And we become more connected with this internalized, now it becomes self-criticism, self-judgment, self-shaming. So had I not awakened with Will, I would have from the outside in externally imposed upon him. He would have internalized that, and that would become his internalized voice. This is what happened with most of us. We have an internalized voice of self-criticism, self-judgment, self-shame. So how then do we reconnect with the feeling of self-love that I'm telling you we all came onto this planet with? The experience of liking who we are. If that is inside of us, if that is encoded within us, then it becomes a question of how do we find it? How do we recover it? How do we reconnect to it? How do we make it familiar? What do we do to even meet it again? So the way that we first begin to meet that place within us again is first of all to become aware of the ways that we criticize, judge, shame, and sabotage ourselves. So just call forward any of the ways, become aware any of the ways that you might criticize, judge, shame, or sabotage yourself. And as you become aware, the next step is to become accountable to yourself, to become honest and authentic with yourself and say, I am aware and I take accountability that I am mean to myself, that I am unkind to myself, that I rage against myself, judge myself, criticize myself, shame myself. I take accountability. I take responsibility because I'm aware now. I'm seeing that I do it, and I'm seeing more often than not that I do it consistently, often. So you're becoming aware and you're becoming accountable. Once you have taken accountability and responsibility, the next part is the best part. You're aware, you're taking accountability, and now you're saying to yourself, I so seek to repair this. I'm seeing it, I'm taking accountability for it, and I so seek to repair the way that I am with myself. You cannot change how you were raised. You cannot change the experiences that you went through, but you can 100% repair your relationship with yourself now. You can say to yourself, oh, I see. I have begun to criticize and shame myself as a way of life, and I want to repair that. This is not the relationship I want to have with myself anymore. From this moment forward, I am interested in repairing this relationship. This is the magic moment. This is the secret sauce. This gives you dominion again. So your dominion was taken away from you when you were criticized, when you were judged, when you were shamed. It became this internalized way of life. And when you say to yourself, I'm aware now, I'm accountable now, and I don't want to relate to myself like that anymore. I'm seeking to repair this relationship with myself. I seek a different relationship with myself now. I'm seeking something different. And then you become clear. I'm seeking something different. So you are telling yourself, my intention is to repair this relationship. My intention is to cultivate something new. My intention is to create something different. My intention is to create something that is more connected, more loving, more kind, more intimate, more supportive. You begin to repair. You begin to say, I apologize for the way that I am treating myself as of now, and I'm seeking something different. So are you all right now, right where you are, apologizing to yourself, willing to apologize to yourself? There is nothing more dignifying than an apology. There is nothing more dignifying than a self apology. Your core self, your authentic self, your essence. This is like a breath of fresh air. Just imagine, you all, you have a way of life where it's become normalized, it's become familiar to you to criticize and shame yourself. It's normal, it's familiar. Think about going to yourself and saying, oh my gosh, I see. I'm treating you with criticism and judgment and sabotage and shame. It's ugly, it's messy, it's unkind. It doesn't feel good. It separates me from my own heart, from my own loving. I don't love it. I don't like it. I want to repair. I apologize. I cannot change up until now, but I apologize. And what I can change is now moving forward. So this is what repairing sounds like. This is what an apology sounds like. And the best repairing and the best apology is a change of behavior. So when you sincerely set an intention, I want to create a different relationship. I want to repair the relationship that I've had up until now with myself. And it's sincere. This is speaking to your core self, your essential self, your authentic self. And this is where you start creating inner safety. And if I could give you another word for self-love, for self-like, it would be self-safety, inner safety. When you say to yourself, I want to repair this relationship, I'm intending a more kind, more connected, more supportive relationship. I'm aware of how I've been. I apologize for how I've been. I'm intending new behavior. That is like music to your soul. It's like music to your core self, your essential self. It's music to your heart. Because why? Imagine when you were little and someone was unkind to you and they disrespected your boundaries and they told you you weren't enough and they told you to hide your light and dim your light and you would amount to nothing or you were too much. Had they come back to you and said, oh my gosh, I am so aware of how I am treating you and I take accountability and I am repairing this and I will change my behavior and I want a different relationship. If someone had literally come to you, it would have radically changed your life. Certainly, that moment with my son, Will, it woke me up. Certainly, I said to him, I apologize. That is not how I want to be with you. And it woke me up. And as I said, the best apology is a change of behavior. And so I made it my business. I made it my intention. I made it my commitment to treat myself differently, to learn to become more patient with myself so that I would be more patient with him, to be more accepting of myself so that I would be more accepting of Him. So now, so far, we have that you are aware, you are taking accountability, you are apologizing, you are repairing. And now we need to call forward, well, then what does liking yourself, accepting yourself, loving yourself, creating this inner safety, what does that look like? What does that feel like? What does it feel like to create an inner consciousness where your heart is a safe space for all of you? That is self-love. That is self-like, that inner safety. So just begin to imagine when you were little, what would have made you feel safe with the grown-ups around you? What would have made you feel safe in your third grade class? What would have made you feel safe with an aunt or a cousin or a sibling or a parent? What did you need in order to feel safe? And as you're allowing this to come to you, oh, I needed this to feel safe. Oh, I needed this to feel safe. I needed to hear my mom say, I will never leave you. I will not abandon you. I will stay connected even if I don't agree with you. There's enough space for you to do your life your way and me to do my life my way. I will never leave you. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. These are the things I needed to hear. What were the things you needed to hear? Call them forward, write them down. And now say those very things to yourself. Because I guarantee you, what you needed when you were 6 years old, what you needed when you were 16 years old, is what you need still right now. So then I need to say to myself, I will not abandon me. I will not neglect myself. That very thing is a doorway, a bridge to self-love. Imagine if I just said every day to myself, I will not neglect myself. And I created that into behaviors and actions that would become my new way of life, that would become my new way of being. So whatever it is that you most needed to hear from those grown-ups around you, that is now what you want to begin to say to yourself. I'm not going anywhere. You are enough exactly as you are. I see your light, shine it bright. You are so bright. You are so radiant. You are so gifted. You are so generous. I see your generosity. I see your sensitivity. I see your vulnerability. Whatever it is that you most needed to hear, you're saying that to yourself right now. And I want you to begin to imagine that you're writing a love letter to yourself. You're writing a love letter. It could be to the 4-year-old part of yourself. It could be to the 8-year-old, the 18-year-old, the 28-year-old self if you're older than 28. What is the love letter that you most needed to receive from someone? What is the love letter that you most needed to receive from someone? Imagine the love letter that you most needed to receive from someone is still the love letter that you are longing to receive right now. And so call forward into your heart the love letter that you are still needing to hear right now and commit to writing that love letter to yourself. The very things that you are longing for someone else to say to you, the very things that you longed for someone to say to you, are the very things that within you right now are still longing to hear, but need to hear them from you. We think we need to hear them from the external, and we think when we do hear them from the external, that it is what we need to heal. But I promise you that even if you get from the external world or from an external individual, the very things that you think you need, I promise you that your soul will not rest until you give those things to yourself, until you write that letter to yourself, because inside of you is the place that it's missing. And inside of you is the only place that can fill what is missing. I am so fortunate. I'm married to an incredibly loving and compassionate individual. Jamie, my partner, is incredibly loving and compassionate. My son, very sensitive, loving, compassionate. I do receive from the outside in those words of affirmation, those actions of affirmation. They do see me. I am seen. I feel seen. I feel valued. I know that I matter. I know that I am enough in their eyes. And yet, and still, I can tell you that as wonderful as that feels, and it does feel wonderful, and I am deeply grateful, it is not the thing that has healed me from the inside out, because to the degree that I have not experienced it from inside of myself to myself is to the degree that I won't even be able to really take it in and embody it from the outside in. And in reverse, it is wonderful, and it is wonderful to hear and experience and be in a relationship that is kind and loving. And still, if there is a place inside of you that did not hear it, then that external, if you're in a healthy relationship now, that's great because that external can give you modeling. But ultimately, your soul won't rest until you give those words of affirmation to yourself, until you see yourself, until you are willing to hold yourself in high esteem, until you are willing to learn this whole language of self-compassion. I have an online course if you're interested. It's called Learning the Language of Self-Compassion. Why? Because as I'm saying, we haven't heard this language. We are not fluid. We are not fluent in the language of self-compassion. We're not fluid and fluent in the language of kindness and gentleness and self-support. We don't know what it sounds like because we're not modeled it from the world. So if you want to dive deeper into this, my course, Learning the Language of Self-Compassion, I have the link in the show notes. I have another course called Healing the Heart of the Inner Child. And both of these two courses really dive deep into learning the language. What does it sound like to truly appreciate yourself on a day-to-day basis, to truly be grateful for yourself? What does it sound like? What does it feel like to have self-acceptance, to experience self-support, to truly learn how to soothe yourself? It starts by asking yourself, what did I most need to hear? And then write that love letter to yourself, and then read that letter over and over and over to yourself. And if you would, come back to my Instagram, write in the comments, or DM me, email me. What are the things you most needed to hear? And send me little snippets of your letter to yourself. Share with others in your life. Oh, self-criticism has become so familiar to me, but I'm learning a new language. And I'm learning that by writing a love letter to myself. Because once you start writing these love letters to yourself, the language will open up from the inside out of you. You know what you most needed to hear. You know what you were missing. It is within you. And as you tune in and as you tap in to what you most needed to hear, you will put yourself in a flow. And the bridge to that flow is to simply ask yourself, what did I most need to hear that I didn't hear? And be willing to write that love letter to yourself, and then allow yourself to be in that flow and let that flow expand and expand, and write and write and write. And then please let me know what you're writing. It's so soul satisfying. It's so soul fulfilling. It is a way to bring you back to your most authentic self. I promise you, when you write a love letter to yourself with the things that you most needed to hear that you did not hear, what I promise you is you will feel like a thirsty traveler in the desert that just met someone who had a large glass of water. And that water was so quenching because we are each thirsty and starving and hungry for our own self-love, for our own reconnection to our most authentic self. And the way to bridge that gap that we have is to write that love letter to yourself. So try it this week and please come back and let me know how it goes. I want to hear the specific things that you are writing because I promise you, you will feel well fed and you will be so hungry for more and more and more that you will start writing letter after letter after letter. I write a letter to myself practically every day of my life, practically, because we need to hear it. We deserve to hear it. And it is life changing and life transforming. And it will absolutely transform your relationship with yourself from the inside out. And then for these next episodes, I will be consistently exploring and expanding upon this area that can be so elusive called love, but we're going to make it more tangible, more real, so that you are experiencing from the inside out, and then you are able to experience it with all those that you're close to in your outer life. So give yourself permission to thrive this week. Much love, everyone. See you next week. Thank you so much for listening. If there was something in this conversation that spoke to you, we'd so appreciate it if you would take the time to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share this episode with women and mothers you know, because you are here to thrive. See you next time.